So I'm Amelia Tamburrini, and I'm the CEO of Hub Consulting. My work in the world is around creating cultures of belonging, and I do that in organizations, in schools, in lots of different settings. This work really comes from my own history of having a lot of division in my own family life, and seeing that there was a lot of division in communities and knowing that I can do something about that given my own journey. Division was a really important part of my life when I was really young. So I had two beautiful parents who had no idea how to manage differences of opinion. And they spent most of my childhood fighting with one another. There was a lot of violence, a lot of addiction in the home. And then an epic 5-year divorce battle. And so when I grew up, I thought division was to be avoided at all costs, which meant that I went through my life avoiding conflict and keeping the waters calm. And what I realized was that that actually created a lot more harm in my life and my relationships, and I didn't want to continue that pattern. So there was a point in my life where that was enough, and I wanted a life different. I wanted to be okay when conflict was present and to be able to speak my truth, but also hear the truth of the other person. And so that really got me into becoming a facilitator, creating a space for all voices to be heard, because also in that environment, I didn't have a voice. My parents were very consumed with their own goings on. And so I got to be really sensitive to environments where voices were not being heard, which also motivated my work in becoming a facilitator and creating those spaces. And it's certainly why I work in Circle today, where we are passing a talking piece and hearing everybody's wisdom be shared.
So I guess what I'm asking is, how do you take care of yourself, being surrounded by all of this and having the upbringing that you did?
Yeah, my route to my own well-being is really around the inner work. So I've sat in many circles and had the opportunity to share my story. And what I learn in the work that I do is that when we have an opportunity to share our story in a space where people aren't trying to fix us or make things different or interrupt and give their advice, when we just give voice to our story, our experience, that in and of itself is healing. It is how I'm able to regulate my own emotions and stay present to what is happening. A big part of that is also doing that work of getting to know what emotions are and being okay with having those in my body. So I'm not like trying to avoid certain feelings that have been deemed negative in our society, but just getting really curious when those happen. And that curiosity, it opens doors, it opens more understanding in terms of why I am the way I am or why I might be reacting the way I am, and allows me that pause to take a deep breath and come back into like a more grounded place.
What part of this do you think you're most passionate about? If there's one thing you wanted everyone to know or to learn, or that you could make the biggest impact in, what would it be?
What I want everybody to know is that doing your inner work, getting to know yourself, facing your own demons, looking at your own past through that trauma-informed lens that we're talking so much about right now, is the scariest thing we can do as humans, but it is the most freeing thing. And that is where our joy comes from, our fulfillment, our satisfaction in life. And I feel like that's like the hidden secret to doing this inner work. We get so focused on how hard it's going to be. But it's only through pain that we find freedom, that we find those new paths forward. And our communities need that. Our communities are in a lot of pain, coming out of COVID, coming out of all of the trauma of our history. And we need more spaces for people to just be able to share their story and be with their emotions so that we can heal our communities, create more safety, create more resilience, and more well-being.
With the kindness circles that you were doing, what do you think, what do you want people to take away from that? If there's one thing that you want somebody to leave with, what do you think you want them to leave with?
At the root of the kindness circle is an experience where people get to look at how they're showing up and contributing to some of the things that they really don't want to see in our communities. Judgment, discrimination, and the kindness circle is a safe space where people can say, okay, I really don't like that out there, and oh, how am I actually showing up in that exact same way? And that's really hard work to do that. And what comes out of that is a sense of freedom. There's a relaxation to say, oh, okay, I do have judgment in me. That doesn't make me a bad person, but once I'm aware of it, I can actually do something about it, make a choice in the moment of whether I want to contribute more judgment back out into the world, or I want to choose a different way to see this situation. So I think for me, that's what the kindness circle is all about. It's about putting the power back in our hands, every single individual in a community, to create the kindness that they want to see by showing up in that way.
Do you find that the kindness circles, do you feel like in your experience kind of conducting them, have you found that they kind of, they have a good way of kind of naturally bringing people together? Or have you found that some people are like more hesitant? Or like, I guess more to kind of simplify it, like how is the process seem to you? Does it seem like it's a little more smooth going, or do you feel like you've seen a lot of hesitation?
Great question. When people arrive to the kindness circle, I sense there's a lot of vulnerability, a lot of hesitancy to be like, oh, what is this? Because we work in circle, so there's no tables between us, there's no barriers, it's just us sitting around a fire, and not a real fire, but we create that experience. That experience comes from ancient traditions that are held with a lot of our Indigenous communities today, but it's actually the root of how we all gathered at some point in our ancestral lineage. What I find is that hesitancy, it dissipates as people start to share their stories one at a time, and they start to say, oh, I can actually relate to that person's experience over there. Maybe what I'm thinking that it's just me is actually more of a common human experience. And in that being seen and being heard, people relax into, I think, their true essence and leave with more calm in their body. And it's not to say there's not resistance in the circle, because it's hard to be that vulnerable. And a lot of people, especially in this community, vulnerability is not okay, and it doesn't feel like a safe thing. But when we can create an environment for that to be there at whatever level you want to express yourself, there's so much healing that happens and connection.
Thank you very much. Is that all the questions?
Yeah, I think that's
Cool.
Brad?
Thank you. Awesome.